Welcome to the Political Matrix News. We have the sources, we have the truth from inside the political matrix. Once again, we are joined in progress for the Political Matrix News. Oh, wait a minute. We're starting all over from scratch. We do this every now and then. Rob Milford, Scott Miller, Greg Fink. We're doing this on Tuesday, the 6th of August, a very historic day. 79 years ago today, a small group of guys, the 509th Bomb Group, took off from the small island of Tinian in the Marianas, not far from Saipan. In fact, Saipan was 15 miles over that way. They flew
Close
pretty
to where
much.
I was born.
You were born in Saipan or Guam?
I was born in Guam.
I had no idea you were Guamian. I somehow didn't know that. You know, it's
I'm a military brat.
Well, there you go. But Guam is Guam. Chip Simmons, who's the sheriff of Escambia County, Florida, that's Pensacola, he was born in Iceland.
Huh.
Yeah, small world. The only one we got. So anyway,
lots of hot girls that love Americans.
There you go. In Iceland especially. That's where we get most of our blonde hair, blue eyes. So they flew to a little town, a medium-sized town in Japan called Hiroshima, and they dropped one bomb that detonated about 800 feet above ground level, and therefore the first atomic bomb. That was the first truly strategic bombing mission. It changed the world. Stephen Ambrose, the famed historian World War II primarily, always maintains that D-Day was the most important day of World War II, and arguably he's probably right, because that shifted everything in Europe. Once you take out Hitler, everybody else is easy. But then Hiroshima was probably the bookend, the second most important day of World War II. And so you got to take, you got to recognize that for what it is. And over the years, I managed to meet three of the crew members, including Tom Farabee, the bombardier, and of course, Colonel Paul Tibbets. And all you do is say, an honor to meet you, sir. Thanks for doing a dirty job. Little known fact, Paul Tibbets was actually the mission commander for the very first B-17 attack on German targets in World War II when the U.S. Army Air Force finally set up shop in England. On to other things. Speaking of history-making days, we're doing this on a day that a governor of Minnesota was brought on board the Democratic ticket to be Kamala Harris's vice president. His name is Tim Walz. Then, in between episodes, we chit-chat because we have to do things. And it came up, wow, what's the latest on the Trump assassination conspiracy theory desk? And then Scott Miller, who's right there, maintains what, Scott?
I said that there's not a lot of new information coming out, so that's why it's kind of dying as a story. You know, there's not a whole lot. What I don't understand, I don't know if this is going to step on what you're about to talk about, but the thing that I don't understand is, when cops get involved in shootings, they suspend them with pay, put them on desk jobs or something like that, take them out of the field regardless, until they kind of sort out exactly what happened. That hasn't happened at all, and that's the thing for me that's the most perplexing.
I mean, I saw the press conference with the new guy, and it was almost as frustrating as the press conference with the old guy. I mean, it's like still no answers. Still, we're going to look into this. Still, we're going to start using drones. The whole idea that they never had to use a drone before is beyond me. The whole idea that this was actually the first time they were using snipers with Trump was freaking ridiculous. I mean, he had spoken in the Bronx a few weeks before that. He spoken somewhere else in New York City with all the skyscrapers and everything else all around. They didn't have any snipers then. He turned them down. And it's just ridiculous. How in the hell do you have a guy speak with his presence and with all the threats against him? You don't have any snipers out there, being on the lookout for somebody to take a shot at him. It's totally ridiculous. I mean, and that's the only new stuff we learned. And we didn't learn that they're going to do it again. We learned that...
Well, I'm glad you said that's the only thing we learned, because late on Monday, the U.S. Attorney in New York announced that Asif Merchant, has been arrested. He is an agent for Iran, and he plotted to hire hitmen to assassinate Donald Trump. That's a federal... I'm serious. He was accused of planning political assassinations in New York in August or early September. He was paying $5,000 advances to two men he believed to be contract killers. They, in fact, were FBI agents, aren't they always? And This was in retaliation from Iran against Trump for ordering the killing of General Soleimani, and he of the Quds Force, the chief terrorist, really, out of Iran. A lot of Trump is on a lot of hit lists everywhere, everywhere. Merchant traveled to New York in June, met with the hitmen. Then he came up with the cash, and they arrested him when he was flying out of the country on July the 12th. And he had previously traveled to the U.S., trolled seedy hangouts like strip clubs and bars, hoping to encounter criminals he could recruit into his plot. All of this out of the New York Post. And
So they arrested him on the 12th, you said, right?
he wanted to hire about 25 people to act as a distraction after the assassination to assure a getaway of all of the shooters. And they show, big stacks of $100 bills here. And his wife and children are living in Iran, and he has a wife and children in Pakistan. I don't think he's going to be seeing them anytime soon. This is totally unrelated to the Trump shooting.
Exactly.
And because, he was arrested the day before the shooting. So I just find that fascinating, but you never can tell. Yeah,
they still let the parade go on. They still let everything go on, and they still drop the ball after knowing all of that.
Yeah. And
wow.
but I don't know that the FBI told the Secret Service. They are Department of Justice. Hang on. They're Department of Justice. They're the ones who did the investigation. They made the arrest, etc. The Secret Service is under Homeland Security. Previously Department of the Treasury. So they don't talk to each other. They're very competitive. Very, very competitive.
Well, you remember after 9/11, I mean, that one of the biggest challenges we had was the siloing of information.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a similar fashion, there were and also prompted a lot of conspiracy theories, was that different organizations had different pieces of puzzle that if you put them together would have been incredibly alarming, but they were only mildly concerning when taken all on their own.
Absolutely.
And if we only had some clearinghouse for that information, well, we might have had a different outcome.
I mean, I was kind of joking sarcastically with Scott about this a few weeks ago, but I wish we had more people like Snowden around who could at least expose all the connections that are not being connected. I mean, there's obviously either just complete stupidity or pure, deliberate malice that they're not communicating together. Yeah. I mean, they have no idea what they're doing at all, which I don't think is the case, or they're just some sort of diabolical or some sort of idea that I have no idea who's behind. But I mean, for some reason, it's like everybody knows step 1, 2, and 3, but not 6. And then they go to 9, 10, and then they go to 13. And the other people who know all the missing other pieces are over here and over here, and nobody's communicating whatsoever. I mean, the whole idea that so many things are dropping and missing, whether it's the border issue or all the way back to COVID, everything else, and all the way. Everything is just so bizarre and so strangely misaligned as far as the communication with the intel agencies. But one thing they can all agree on is they all think that Trump's a terrorist, everything else, and that he's the enemy of the state. He's the most dangerous threat to democracy. They can't agree on that.
Well, this is coming from the people who call the Betsy Ross flag a symbol of terrorist organizations.
Exactly. Yeah. They can agree on that, but they can't agree on how to stop somebody from shooting somebody or how to stop a criminal element from infiltrating voting booths or voting machines or anything else.
I will say this one thing, and that's that my experience with this kind of thing, though, is it's almost always a blend of incompetence and contempt. When you mix those two things together, that's you have a government agency.
Yes, and I have a friend right now who's working in Huntsville, the Army Redstone Arsenal, and all of the various things that are up there. He is paid handsomely into the 6 figures. He hasn't been to his office other than to have coffee twice in the last year. Reports in every morning at 8:30, checks his email, and he logs off about 9 o'clock. They've had zero work, but they're keeping the core group together for the next contract that comes along. I'm serious as I can be. He is bored to tears. Now, one more thing, back to the Trump shooting, and we had the outgoing director of the Secret Service. She's gone. You know what else she did? I want you to think back in time in the last year or so, where when she got the top job, the one thing she did was quash. You don't get to use that word very often. She quashed the investigation into the cocaine found in the White House library.
Right.
If some member of Congress had asked her that a couple of weeks ago, just sort of said, we were still kind of preoccupied with Trump and his head, but it would have been really great if somebody had asked that question. Hey, where'd that cocaine come in the White House library come from? And she was under oath. She was under freaking oath. She still wouldn't have told the truth, but I just think it's really interesting.
And
maybe the truth.
The fun thing is, she wouldn't have been able to hide behind the ongoing investigation thing that they always hide behind.
That is true.
They couldn't.
And that is, and the FBI, honestly, you're absolutely right. The FBI should give an update to say, well, we've done this many interviews and we're necking things down. We've done all the ballistics, recovered all the bullet fragments, which the FBI, that's their thing, man. They're, micro, little, look at everything under the microscope, the legal microscope anyway. So I think that's pretty good. I haven't heard about the funeral for the shooter.
I have a question.
What?
How long do we think it's going to be before Kamala gives an open, press conference style interview where people just random questions just come her way?
March.
Because it's been 2 weeks and she still hasn't done it.
Nope.
I say March.
Nope, not going to happen. They're going to run.
I'm thinking early November.
No, they're going to run a basement campaign. They're going to run a basement campaign. They worked for Joe Biden 4 years ago. They're going to. Now they can keep her on the road. They can keep her on the road nonstop, and she can go everywhere and give a speech a day, and use the teleprompter, not be extemporaneous, not ad lib at all. She'll stay on message. She will not give a news conference. She will not give one-on-one interviews. And if it does, it'll show up the Sunday before Election Day. So that would be November the 3rd. Is that the Sunday? I stand to be corrected on that.
I believe she'll do a few one-on-one interviews, but they'll be very, very curated with people that are very, very, they'll have the questions in advance. And there'll be softball questions at that, or questions that directly lead to her talking points.
I think her first authentic, real press conference will be in March if she gets elected. Because I think what she's going to be doing, she'll be using the excuse is that I got in the race late. I don't have time. I'm doing catch up. I'm doing a catch up campaign, and so I don't have time to sit here with a press conference for 2.5, 3 hours when I could be going out glad handing and fundraising. And so that's going to be their staff's excuse. The reason why they're not going to be able to do it until their first formal press conference will be after she takes inauguration, because they're not going to allow her to make the mean mistakes extemporaneously until she takes the hand on the Bible, or the Quran.
I don't think Americans realize, because it's fresh. Wow. Woman nominated for president. Yay. By the way, the nomination actually happened, and the vote happened overnight, Monday into Tuesday, August 5th into August 6th. When the sun came up today, the paperwork was done. All of the, no other Republican candidates. So the idea of an open convention, no. Somebody else running for president, they're not going to, I don't even know they're going to open it to nominations. I really don't. Somebody's got to nominate her, and as soon as she's nominated, wham, that gavel will come down. Okay, let's do this unanimously. All in favor? Aye. Okay, fine. She's nominated. Yay. That's how they're going to do it. There's not going to be any disruption. There's not going to be anybody off script. And I don't care how pissed off some Democrats are about how all this went down. A woman who has never stood for national election.
Well,
And no
I'll tell
delegate.
you,
Never had a
that
delegate.
personally, I have complete and utter faith in her ability to screw this up because she has a long history
Sure.
of even when she's scripted, just blowing it and coming up with this word salad that she can't help herself.
Or this
So,
scenario, whenever
it's only a matter of time, and I keep going back to the old white guy bailing her out because he actually is a very personable speaker and a very warm and engaging person, which is the
now
opposite of her.
here's the other thing that you and I talked about though, because now the Democratic convention will be going on. Is Biden going to step down as president and resign, making her a basically the pseudo incumbent president with this crazy man Tim Waltz, Waltz, whatever his name is, Waltz, as the vice presidential vice president instead of the candidate. And so, how does that work? I mean, so somebody want to comment on this video here if they've stuck in this long on the video?
Oh, look at that.
Please let us know how to.
So whenever there's a vacancy in the office of the vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority of both houses of Congress, which means we won't have a vice president through the election.
Wow.
Nope. Which means what? Means the Speaker of the House is number 2 in line, and the Capitol Police, which staff the bodyguard detail for the Speaker and the whips and the leaders and so on, that will actually be taken over by the Secret Service because the Speaker will be considered, he's the next in line.
I don't know if I was Mike Johnson, I'd second guess that theory.
I would wonder if they're up to the job because they're not at this moment.
Let go Speaker of the House. Hang on, Speaker of the House, President Pro Tem of the Senate, and then we start with cabinet secretaries.
Correct,
so the vice president's President Pro Tem.
No, he's the vice president's president of the Senate. President Pro Tem is the leader, is the majority leader.
Correct. Yeah,
I believe, but it's not one of those things I paid attention to since about 5th or 6th grade civics class. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Political Matrix News. Greg Fink, Scott Miller, and I am Rob Milford. Thank you for being part of this with us and enjoying the conversation, maybe yelling back at your screen. Perfectly okay. We're delighted to have you subscribe for free. You're always people say subscribe. Well, that's going to cost me. Not going to cost you ever. Okay. And then you can always like us. And if you really want to make a point with someone else because you agree with us, go ahead and share to the person who disagrees with you. I do it all the time. My Christmas card list is a lot shorter now, so I got no problem with that. We'll be back coming up. Another exciting episode of the Political Matrix.